Hey everyone. All right, so we're just gonna get started because the live is gonna be posted on my channel, so persons are always gonna be able to watch it back instead of waiting for persons to join. All right, sorry about that. Okay. Alrighty, so for today we're going to be doing weather and climate, and we're going to be focusing also on elements of weather. So let's first differentiate what weather and climate is. Now, the difference between weather and climate is time. It's always important to know that the main difference between weather and climate is time. Now, weather describes the condition of the atmosphere over a short period of time, example from day to day or week to week, versus climate, which is an average condition over a long period of time. Weather is also specific to a small area or place, generally doesn't cover a whole region most of the times. So, for example, today you step outside, it's cloudy, there are chances of rainfall. And then in the afternoon, it's sunny. That's a short period of time. Or for this week, you're going to be having thunderstorms, and then for next week, you're going to be having sunshine. That is literally what weather is. Now, as you step outside, you're going to experience many facets, or what many persons call elements of weather. You're going to feel humidity, temperature, pressure. You're going to see the wind, so wind speed, wind direction. You're going to see the clouds, cloud cover, and of course, the types of clouds that are in the atmosphere. And of course, you're going to see if there's rainfall, you're going to feel it. And these are all atmospheric characteristics of the conditions of weather. Now, I have a question that you can think about. You don't have to respond in the chat, but think about it before I provide a response. What do you think is the ultimate source of responsibility for the weather? What do you think is ultimately responsible for weather? So I'll give you that 5 seconds. Any guesses? All right, that's fine. Hope you thought about it though. The ultimate source for weather is the sun, right? So sun is ultimately responsible for weather conditions. Its rays are absorbed differently by land and water surfaces. So differential warming, differences in warming, of course, is going to cause variations in temperature, pressure, humidity, and so on. Now, yes, thank you so much. So the sun, that's correct. All right, so the climate of an area or country is known through the average weather over a long period of time. So, what's the weather that we always see in a specific region? You summarize all of that and you have the climate, which is the average weather conditions. So, you see how weather is day to day, it changes based on difference in human activities, amount of sunshine, so on and so forth. But climate takes all of that into consideration to say this is the average precipitation a region gets, or this is average temperature, this is average humidity, and all of that is what makes climate. Now, if an area has more dry days throughout the year than wet days, it would be described as a dry climate. A place which has more cold days and hot days would be known as a cold climate. So we know where we are now, in the tropic zone, in the temperate zone, it's very warmer. So we know we have warm climate versus closer to the poles, cold climate. So we see how we use weather to get an idea of the average climate of an area. Now we're just going to go into elements of weather and their instruments, what they are, what's used to measure them, so we get a better understanding of the elements that affect us on a daily basis, whether we think about it or not. Since recently, I find myself always checking the weather because one, the weather fluctuates like crazy. So one day it's like hot, the other day it's cold. One day it's like sunny, and the next day it's snowing. So it's good to have an idea of what you're going to walk out into before you're just like unprepared. So it's going to be a rainy day, but I forgot to bring my umbrella, or it's going to be a cold day and I didn't wear a jacket. So I always find myself I always find myself checking what the weather is. And I don't just focus on rainfall. I'm like, how humid is it? Is it going to be a very humid day? And I know that I'm not going to be wearing, for example, makeup, or I won't have a lot of products in my hair, or I won't wear anything that's too warm. Versus if it's low humidity, then I know that, it's going to be a little bit drier. I dress accordingly. Is there going to be rainfall? What's the temperature like? Is it going to be like super hot, super cold? Is it going to be the perfect temperature? So I always look at that. Is it going to be windy? So I always check for wind as well. Is it going to be, like, am I going to wear something and the breeze is just going to take it away? Like, these are stuff that I always check. So therefore, I consider them very important. So I advise you to always check the weather, get an understanding of what the temperatures are like before you head out. So the first element that we're going to cover is temperature. There are approximately 8 elements of weather: temperature, air pressure, wind, humidity, precipitation, visibility, clouds or type of cover, which can be joined together, and also sunshine duration. So the first one we're going to speak about is temperature. Another thing, temperature, there's a lot of things that temperature can be applied to, of course. And usually, even me in university now, when I hear temperature, I just think hot or cold. And that's simply what it is. It's how hot or cold something is. Technically speaking, or scientifically speaking, temperature is a measurement of the amount of kinetic energy present in the air, which manifests itself as the experience of heat or cold. Now, temperature is like the main thing that we think about when we're discussing weather. It's the first topic. And it's a very important topic. And we all know, or we should know, what is used to measure temperature. And of course, it's a thermometer. So sometimes we're in for the doctor's visit, and the nurses take our temperature. They use a thermometer, and of course, if we're going to take the temperature of the atmosphere, we're going to use a thermometer, maybe one that's differently designed than the ones that you see at the doctor's office, but it does the same thing nevertheless. So thermometers, come in all shapes and sizes, and they date back to. So this is a fun fact that you can always include in your science project, or if you just want to let someone know that thermometers date all the way back to 1714. And in 1714, there's not much technological advancement, scientific advancement, medical advancement. So it's good to know that this instrument has some history. Now, you have different types of thermometers. You have mercury, bimetal, and digital thermometers, and these are commonly used to measure temperature. So that's basically it. How hot or cold something is, what it's measured with, a thermometer. Basic, something that we've been introduced to from earlier on. Now we have air pressure. Now, air pressure is very essential in determining weather. And what is it exactly? When I think air pressure, I think weight of air. So I always have some things that come to my mind as soon as I hear a specific word. So air pressure is the result of the pressure created by the weight of air in the Earth's atmosphere. I always say the weight of air on the Earth. It's also known as barometric pressure. So you can hear those two words interchangeably. And it's also called that because it's named after the instrument to measure air pressure. So can anyone guess what is the instrument used for measuring air pressure? If you are thinking about the barometer, then you are correct. So barometer is the instrument that's used to measure air pressure, and it was developed in 1643. So that's very interesting as well, by someone called Evangelista. So it was he developed the first device in 1643. Um, some important facts to know about air pressure. The weight of the particles in the air create pressure due to the gravitational force of the earth. Now, since more air is present above the air, close to the ground, air pressure is the highest on the planet's surface and it decreases as altitude increases. So the higher up you go, the less air pressure you're going to have. The closer you are to Earth's surface, the more air pressure you're going to have, simply speaking. Now, when we speak wind, we think about two things. We think about wind speed and we think about wind direction. So, what's an element of weather? Wind. However, to be specific, wind speed and wind direction. What is wind? Wind is simply the large scale movement of air from an area of high to an area of low pressure in the atmosphere. I'm not sure if my camera is picking up the outside, but do you see those palm trees moving? What's moving them? Wind, right? So that's a great primary example right there. Everyone can see that's wind in action right now, a large scale movement of air. Now, let's talk about what measures wind. So for wind speed, we use an anemometer. So the anemometer is the instrument used to measure wind speed. It consists of 3 to 4 half cups of arms rotating around a central axis. And to get a better idea of this, you can always just type in anemometer on Google so you can see how exactly it looks. It's funny enough, you can create your own anemometer, which is very interesting. Very often, the shape is of an arrow, and you can also find it on the top of a weather station or highly elevated objects, which is perfect. When it's at the top, there's less barriers to wind, so you get a good sense of wind direction. Now, sorry, my apologies, you get a good sense of wind speed. Now, what is used to measure wind direction? That's a wind vane, or sometimes called a weather vane. It is a flat shaped object that spins freely on a x-axis. Very often, it's in the shape of an arrow, and you can also find it on the top of a weather station or highly elevated objects. All right, so it's the same thing. You can find both at a high elevation. And that's, of course, less barriers. You get a better understanding of wind direction. For anemometer, you get a better understanding of wind speed. Now, it's also common to see them on the top of roof chimneys, church towers, or even communication towers. So if you see them there, don't be surprised. They're commonly there. Nothing to worry about. Now, another element of weather is humidity, and I can say this is kind of my personal favorite, not for any specific reason, but I just like hearing about humidity. There's something about humidity that's very interesting to me. And I think it's also very important because I don't know, but something about the amount of moisture in the atmosphere is just very interesting to me. I know it's weird. I don't really have any basis for it, but I just love talking or I love, finding about humidity, finding out more about humidity. So what it is it's the amount of water vapor that's present in the atmosphere at any specific time. Um, so how much water vapor is in the air? Do we have a lot? Do we have a little? Water vapor is nothing more than water in the state of gas after the liquid has evaporated. So it's water, but it's in its gaseous form. Although humidity and its effects can usually be felt, it is normally invisible to the naked eye. And I think that's why it's also interesting for me because you can't see it, but you can feel it. There's sometimes when I just go outside and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so humid. Even yesterday, I was walking and the temperatures are high, of course, but it was just so humid and I just felt so like in a wet environment. You know what I mean? Like I was close to a swamp and it was hot. So, that's very humid. Like when it rains and it's hot, it is very humid. But that's what I felt. And I was like, wow. And then there's some days where it just feels so normal, like it's relatively humid. And then you have some days where it's just like, wow, this is low humidity. I can actually not feel any moisture in the atmosphere. So I think it's so interesting to see. Um, Now, what is used to measure humidity? So we use a hygrometer to measure humidity. Um, and it's very important. It sounds familiar. Humidity, hygrometer kind of goes with each other, like temperature and thermometer. So it's easy to remember. Uh, and it's an interesting instrument. And it's only interesting maybe because it's my favorite weather element. Yeah, wind and sometimes different elements for no reason specifically. It's just interesting. Like you just like it more. Like you like wind, and wind is also interesting. Sometimes you're probably by the beach and you see how the waves are just moving, or you see the palm trees like right behind of me right now just moving, and it's so fascinating to say, wow, this is like wind in action, and it's something that you can actually kind of see. As it takes particles or as it moves trees or signs, you can actually see it. So different elements are definitely interesting. Now we have precipitation, which of course is so common, and we think precipitation we always go to rainfall, but you do have different types of precipitation. Um, of course, we know precipitation is like ultimately necessary, and what it is, it's water in its different states, which form after condensation, turn the water vapor into its liquid or solid form, which falls to the ground after it becomes too heavy to stay suspended in the air. Um, so it falls due to gravity. Now, what can precipitation occur in the form of? You have rain, which we all know. You also have snow, which we should all know, but you have hail or grapple as well, or some persons say sleet as well. Um, and precipitation is primarily the result of evaporation and condensation. And this is why we are going to say the sun is important. We need the sun for evaporation so we can have condensation, so we can have precipitation. So if you take away the sun, you have no weather. All right, so it's a very central system. And if we take away the sun, we actually don't have anything, which is why the sun is right where it is, right when we need it, right where we need it, right? Because let's think about it, the sun is what gives plants energy, does photosynthesis. We have food to eat. If there's no sun, there's no photosynthesis, there's ultimately no food to eat, there's no one. No one's going to be fed. The earth is doomed, you know what I mean? So the sun is like the center for most of these processes. What's used to measure rainfall? A rain gauge. Um, so we won't say what used to measure precipitation because, of course, if it's snowing, you're probably going to measure like the inches of snow. So you're probably going to use a standard instrument for that. However, we identify what's used to measure rainfall, which is a rain gauge. Um, and it's essentially a measured container that captures rain and measures the amount that falls over a set period of time. And that's how we can know the annual rainfall of an area, or how much rain falls in an area in specific months, like what we call hurricane season or rainfall season. All right, secondly, we have feasibility. And when we think feasibility, we think what can we see, what can't we see? So visibility is the measure of the degree through which an object can be observed over a certain distance. Now, how many times are we just walking and we look up, we can't see maybe the top of a building because it's so cloudy or it's so foggy? Or we're driving up a hill and we can't see where we're going because there's so much fog. And then sometimes we look up and we can see the building clearly. There we can see anything that we want to see in the sky. Sometimes we can see the plane flying from one area to another. Well, sometimes the clouds kind of block a plane when it reaches a certain distance. So visibility is the degree to which an object can be observed over a certain distance. Now, the measurement is crucial when conditions like mist, haze, fog, and freezing drizzle are present, which can, of course, impede visibility. If you have fog, you can't see much, you're just seeing the fog. Um, that's why sometimes you always have, when you're checking your weather as well, visibility. It may not say visibility, it might just say fog or haze or mist or signs that shows that this is present. So persons know that maybe, okay, maybe I shouldn't go on the hill today, or maybe when I'm driving, I should know to do this, or maybe I should drive throughout the day where it's a little bit brighter. You probably still can't see clearly, but it's better than driving at night. So you get an idea. Now, the importance of the ability to measure this element is often underestimated. It is especially applicable in areas where visibility plays a crucial role, like airports and harbors, where it's literally life or death. As I said before, persons don't really think visibility, but it is important because if you're flying a plane and the pilot can't see, that's not the best sign for you, the pilot, the airline, the airport, the area at all. You know what I mean? Same thing with driving. If you're driving and you can't see, you never know what you're running into, what's happening on the road. You can't see. So it's very important. And it's, of course, an element of weather. So visibility sensors like the forward scatter sensor are the instruments used to measure visibility. In the past, of course, visibility, you can see with your eyes. And you can use your eyes to measure the degree to which visibility is occurring, right? Is it very visible, or can I really see something? If it's just on the fog, I can't really see through it, so it's fine. Or no, I can't see through it at all. All right, for our seventh element, we have wind. Oh, guys, I'm sorry, we have clouds. We have clouds and types of cover. So it's no secret that clouds are one of the quickest ways to determine future and current weather conditions. Let's be honest, how many times we go outside, we see that it's very cloudy, it's very dark. We're like, okay, it's gonna rain. And we see that without looking at our phones or hearing the meteorologist say that it's gonna rain today. We can just look and say, oh, it's gonna rain, or oh, we can say over that side's gonna get some rain, or we can say, oh, the rain is gonna come over here just by looking at clouds. And then when we go outside and we see cirrus clouds, very few clouds, you're like, oh, it's gonna be a sunny day today, or it's gonna be sunny right now, or for the rest of the evening. So clouds are a good indicator of weather conditions. What are clouds though? They are water droplets or water in different states. So we have water like ice or snow crystals, which form, of course, after water vapor reaches its condensation level, also known as dew point, and it can no longer remain in gaseous form. So when water vapor its dew point, can no longer remain in gaseous form, so it forms clouds. And then remember what we spoke about with precipitation? When it gets too heavy, gravity brings it to the ground. So we have our clouds, and sometimes you see some of the clouds floating. Sorry, that means they aren't ready to drop yet. But of course, as condensation increases, water vapor increases in the atmosphere, you're going to have heavier clouds. They're going to appear darker, it's going to be lower, and then it's going to fall as rain. Now, there's different types of clouds, so knowing how to identify a certain type of cloud and whether associated with it can prove valuable when you're assessing weather conditions with only visual references. As we said before, we know when a cloud is dark and low lying, it's cumulonimbus, and it's going to be heavy rainfall, versus when it's just like stratus and it's just there, forming different shapes, then it's not going to be much rainfall at all. So what do we use to measure clouds? Of course, we have weather satellites or radars. And satellites and radar images are able to accurately measure cloud density, the amount of moisture, the temperature, and the movement of the clouds. So very fun instrument there. All right, finally, we have sunshine duration. And what did we say about sunshine? It is the basis for weather, climate, and everything on Earth. Okay, let's give the sun its credit. Now, the amount of sunshine the Earth receives, it's also known as solar radiation, greatly influences other elements of the weather, like temperature and more indirectly, humidity and air pressure. Now, what is sunshine duration? Sunshine duration is the length of time the Earth's surface is directly exposed to solar radiation. So, why can't I speak? Are we exposed to the sun for 5 hours, 24 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours? Some persons get the sun all day, and then sometimes some areas get no sun at all for days upon days. So, what is the sunshine duration like? It is also referred to as sunlight hours and measures the amount of exposure over a set period of time, generally hours per day or per year. Uh, Now, sunshine recorders, more specifically the Campbell-Stokes recorders, are the instruments used to measure sunshine duration. Every time we think about what's used to measure sunshine duration, our eyes, we can literally see it. Well, scientifically speaking, the Campbell-Stokes recorder is used to measure sunshine duration. And it basically consists of spherical lens that focuses sunlight on a specific type of tape to make its measurement. Kind of technical, but it does its job, right? So in summary, there are basically like 8 elements of weather. Sometimes we count visibility, sometimes we don't. But as you know, it's very important, especially it's a matter of life and death for certain situations. But we have an idea what they are, and to be honest, knowing what used to measure them, what they are, is ultimately important for everyone. Unless you want to focus specifically on meteorology or climatology, or go in areas like that, you go more in depth. But I think my aim here was to give a general idea of things that we face on a daily basis and things that we should be aware about, such as humidity, such as wind direction, wind speed. These are things that affect our daily lives, whether we like the environment or not. It affects us. So having a general idea of what it is ultimately very important. Now, if you are interested some more and you're like, this is for me, I want to dedicate my time, my research, my efforts here, then for sure go more in depth, get an idea of how exactly it is. What's important to share your knowledge of what you generally know to everyone, so persons know how things change. And when you get an understanding of this, guess what? You get to understand climate change. You get to see that, oh, it usually rains for this amount of time in this area, but because of climate change, it's raining so much more, which can be good and which can't be good. You have extreme flooding, waterlogged soils, um, but you have a lot of water. You know what I mean? So it's good to understand how the earth is changing, especially with climate, and to get a general understanding of this, it's good to build a foundation. So the foundation, of course, is what is weather, what is climate. Next, I'm going to focus on how is weather and climate changing. What is climate change? What is changing? How is it changing? Why is it changing? And all of these are separate videos, of course, because it really goes in depth. What are the effects of this change? What's causing these changes? What can be done to help prevent these changes, or if not prevent the changes, but what can be done to help mitigate the effects of the change? So all of these are things that I'm going to discuss, but I wanted to ensure that I gave a basis of what weather and climate is. And then we're going to build on there, and then we're going to focus on what is climate change, what causes climate change. Then we're going to focus on what is changing exactly, what are the areas that are affected, and then two, what can we sorry, not two, next, what can we do? And of course we're going to break it down as we continue. But so let's say this is part one to our climate change series, understanding climate and weather. All right, so do you guys have any questions for me in regards to climate and weather? As I said before, I'm providing a basis here so we can build on moving forward. And actually going depth on climate change, because that is something that I am passionate about and something that I would like for everyone, regardless of if you are a climate change activist or just a regular person, take into consideration and know that it's going to affect everyone, regardless of our social status, regardless of where we live, regardless of anything, it's gonna affect everyone. So better we make a change than we get the horrible effects, Everyone should be trying. Um, and that's what I want to enforce. Okay, so if there are no questions, I believe that's the end of the live. I think I did a good job in just summarizing what the weather and climate are and the elements. So if we have no questions, thank you so much, Isaiah, for participating and commenting. I really appreciate it. If there isn't anything else, I see you guys in the next live. Please remember to like, share, subscribe. share with friends and family. Remember, we all live in the environment, and it's all gonna affect us. Anything we do affects us all. All right, thank you. No problem. All right, guys, if you want to rewatch, you have the option to do so. The video will be on my channel. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys in the next video. Bye.